So I'm going to go over 21 through 28 on lesson 13. 20 is just kind of showing the app and how it works. So first off, I put comments in for what I decided to label my IDs. It says give them a descriptive and meaningful ID. So I put these here because I don't really like switching back and forth. So that's just an idea you can do. But I'm going to go to the next one. So first it says we need to create an array that will hold your list of favorite things and add 3 of your own favorite things to your array. So I'm going to do favorite for my array, and it's like a variable, or it is a variable, so I have to put variable in front or var. And I'm going to put my favorite things in. Another option you could do is append your list with those different things. So at any point, if you kind of forget how to do something, even if you don't want to use blocks, you can look them up in here. So let's say I wanted to use append versus just typing them in. I could do append item, and then this down here says my list name, which is favorite, and the item, I don't know, maybe I want to put in pizza is one of my favorite things. And then I could just copy and paste this. Once again, it's fine not to do that, but I wanted to go over append while we were here. Skip on. And we'll do friends, since we're all alone right now. So you can put semicolons at the end. You do not need to. Add 3 of your own favorite things to your array, so that should be good. Nothing should happen yet, but I'm going to move on to the next part of the program. So on this one, we're going to start to do some output. So it says, using set text, set the main text area to show your first favorite thing. So I'm going to use the set text block or set text code, and I'm going to set the text of favorite label. That's what I labeled or named that label. And I'm going to set it to favorite, and I want my first thing, so that's at index 0. The second thing we want to do is set the text of this to 1 out of 3, okay? So when your app starts up, the first item in your list should be displayed, and then we're also going to set that second part. So we'll copy this set text. I named this one number of item label. So this is another reason it's kind of nice to put those comments, because then you can just copy and paste the names of things. So this one we're going to have to use some concatenation. Here it says just to do 1, don't do the index, or use the index to find that, so I'm going to do that. So this is 1 of, and I'm setting this once again, plus, and I want to use the list length because I want this to always read how long the list is. Right now I want this to be 1 of 3, so I'm going to use favorite dot length. When I run this, I see pizza here, and number of item label. I'm just going to go back to my design menu. I must have not typed that correctly. So number of items label. So we'll go back to code, and I missed this, and I'll fix it up here. So we'll run it again. And I see pizza, and I see 1 of 3. It doesn't really want me to switch yet. That'll happen in 24. So moving on to 24. In this section, we want to be able to scroll through the individual items in the array. In order to keep track of which index we are currently viewing, our application will need a global variable that stores the current index. So we're going to use that index. Right now, we're going to create a global variable. So variable, and I'm just going to call this index. And we're going to set that variable to 0. Now we're going to update set text, which displays the words to show your first favorite thing using the global index variable instead of a hard-coded number. So instead of doing favorite 0, I'm going to use this value of the index variable, or the variable I named index here. Okay. Now we're also going to have to change this. We want it to be a 1, but we don't just want to use the number 1, we want it to be able to change. So first off, I'm going to just put of in quotes, and before here, I want index plus 1 because my index is currently 0, but I want this to show 1 of 3. And if you think about it, the item in our list, you know, whether it is the first thing, the second thing, or the third thing, it's really going to be the 0 index, the first index, or the second index. Now up here, for some reason, these values changed because I did not fix them. This is a very short, unprofessional video. So what did I type in here, friends? Who knows why that happened? Okay, so let's just see what happens when we run this. So I have an unexpected token on line 15. Items label, index plus 1. I forgot a plus here, right, to concatenate that. So let's just try that now. So now I see pizza and I see 1 of 3. So I'm really just trying to see the same thing, but now using this variable instead of typing in the actual numbers. So we'll move on to the next one. So for here it says to change the item displayed, the user will use the next and last buttons. You should increase or decrease the global index by 1, and then you should update the information displayed on the screen. To start with, however, we'll just be writing code for our next button. So we're going to add an event handler, and one thing I like to do with the event handlers is I usually drag those in just because it's a lot to type. So it'll change it over to text for me. You can always type it too. So this is, the ID is next button. And when I click that, so that's right, I want to do some sort of a function. So inside of here, when I click the next button, I want index to equal index plus 1. And that's one way we could write it. Maybe the way you're more used to. We could also do index plus plus, okay, because we want to increase the index value each time we go over 1. So write code in this event handler that increments your global index variable. We did that, and then updates the output screen. So we want to redo this code. Okay, so if your code from the last exercise is written to reference this variable, then you should just be able to reuse it once you've incremented your variable. We'll talk more about this in the next exercise. So we're going to cut and paste this, and you should already be thinking about the fact that since we've used this twice, a function might be good. But let's just make sure it works. Okay, so pizza, basketball, see this goes to 2 of 3, and then friends 3 of 3. From there, it's gonna give me an error, and we'll talk more about how to kind of handle that later because we don't have anything past 3. So let's go over to 26. So now we're gonna do our last button. Our user can move forward through our list of favorite things, and we're about to write code that allows them to move backwards as well. So we can right here just cut and paste this, and we'll have very little to change. Okay, so we can actually do index minus minus to decrease that value, and we can use the last button. Okay, so let's see what happens there. I have to go forward first before I can go backwards. But if you see now, as I said, this index minus minus subtracts. Basically, we're just changing the index and then updating the values. So we can go forward, and then last will also take us backwards, noticing that this number also decreases, and we go through our list. So the next part is removing repeated code. Once you add the code for moving backwards through your array, your program will have 3 places where it updates the screen by setting the text of your screen elements. Rather than repeating this code, we should create a function that updates the screen and then calls it every time we need to refresh those elements. This will make our program easier to read and avoids errors because now we don't have to fix something in 3 spots. So I'm actually going to go, here is my first time that I have that repeated code. So just as a reminder, if you forget how to do things, you can write the word function. This is how you define a function in JavaScript. And I'm going to name this update text for my function. Okay, we'll use parentheses. We don't really have any parameters here, so I'm not going to have anything in there. And then I'm just going to put my curly brackets around it. Oops. I like to have things indented even though it's not necessary in JavaScript, so I'm just going to indent those two parts. So now this update text function I can use in both of my event handlers in place of this text, right, in place of this code, since they're both the same. Okay, so let's just see if it still works. Okay, so the next button works, obviously, with the error there. And the last button works. So it looks like we're doing pretty well. So let's move on to the next one. So now we want to use the user to be able to add items of their own to the list. As you might have guessed, this is as easy as inserting an item into our array at the current index. So we're going to add an event handler to the add button. Okay, so I'm going to drag in one, and as I said, I could also just copy and paste this. Why don't we do that? So I won't be keeping this text inside here. So now we're doing our add button. And I need different information. I just had something I had to fix. So basically we're at this point where we're working on this insert item. I'm just going to start that part over again. So insert item, if you look here, we want the list name, which is favorite. We want to put at the current index. So remember, index is the name of our variable. And then lastly, we want the item to insert into the array. Okay, so basically we're going to use getText. And the getText is the ID of a specific element. So I want to get the text from my new input. Okay, so we're going to try this now. So we have pizza still at the beginning. And